There is something ancient and unsettling about a door, not just any door, but your door, the one that creaks when it shouldn't, that holds back the world while holding in your soul. Doors are thresholds. They are spiritual battlegrounds. They are where the sacred and the profane clash, where light from the hearth inside meets the long shadows creeping from the woods outside. And sometimes, when things go quiet in the wrong way, they become sites of strange, unexplainable curses. Have you ever paused at your own front door and felt a chill not caused by the weather? Have you heard a whisper when the world is still? Have you sensed that something waits, not inside, but just outside, staring, lurking, waiting to be invited? You're not losing your mind. You may be under attack. There are curses that do not come as thunderclaps, that do not scream magic in the modern sense. These curses are subtle, invisible, and maliciously intentional. The old kind, the kind rooted in folklore and shadow, and yes, some curses are laid right at the door because the front door is not just wood and hinges. It is the guardian of the soul, and witches, those ancient, cunning manipulators of boundary and belief, they know it. They know how to break a life by first tainting the threshold. The curse may not come with a bubbling cauldron or broomstick, but with silence, routine, and eerily familiar disturbances that gnaw at your peace and sanity. Let me share the most disturbing part up front, because this is not a story. This is a warning. It was just a scratch on the doorframe at first, then came the dying plants, no matter how much I watered. Then the keys started going missing, and I don't mean misplaced, I mean vanished. I started hearing whispers right before sleep. I thought it was stress until my dog refused to go near the door. He whimpered, backed away, even growled at it. And one night, just as I reached for the handle, it turned on its own, slowly, with intention. That's a real account, and it's not unique. There are 7 sinister signs that your front door may have been cursed, not metaphorically, but spiritually infected by someone with the knowledge and will to darken your home. Don't ignore the signs. Don't explain them away, because the longer you let it fester, the deeper it sinks in. These 7 signs are not random. They're deliberate markers in a ritual older than any book, older than any church, older than fear itself. And if one or more of these signs apply to you, the curse is already working. The silent scratch that wasn't there yesterday, the threshold that repels life, the invitation you didn't mean to give you, might be tempted to brush it off, to laugh, to call this coincidence, imagination, or superstition. That is precisely what the enemy of your soul wants, because disbelief is the easiest form of surrender. The door, remember, is symbolic. It represents the transition point between safety and chaos, the known and the unknown, the human and the supernatural. When a curse is laid upon the threshold, it is not just your house that is being targeted. It is your agency, your protection, your sense of dominion, and that loss unfolds slowly through neglect, confusion, and finally despair. If even one of the 7 signs has resonated with your experience, consider this your wake-up call. You are not powerless, but you are being watched. Curses don't just mark a home, they feed on it. They grow like mold in the dark, unnoticed until too late. And more dangerously, they feed on agreement. Every time you ignore a sign, every time you say it's nothing, you feed it. Every time you allow fear to take root instead of courage, you water its influence. But curses can be broken. The same spiritual laws that allow darkness to bind also empower light to unbind. Reclaim your door, speak blessings at it, anoint it, pray over it, decline every invitation the curse made you give unconsciously. Place symbols of hope and holiness near it. Do it not once, but consistently. Your home is not just your shelter, it is your kingdom. You are not a victim unless you agree to be. And here's the truth the witches never want you to remember. Every curse is a counterfeit. It mimics power but has no real authority unless it borrows yours. You are more sacred than you know, more powerful than you've been told, and your front door, it was meant to keep out the cold, not to let in the darkness. So guard it, cleanse it, claim it before it's too late. Written in a tone that is eerie, immersive, and spiritually aware, aligning with the theme of an ancient, unseen curse at the threshold. The first sign comes in silence. It does not knock. It does not announce itself. It whispers through the subtlety of the overlooked and the nearly forgettable. You glance at the doorframe one day, perhaps as you're leaving for work or returning with groceries, or absent, mindedly locking up for the night, and you notice a scratch, thin, maybe only 3 inches long, slanted, fresh, but not bloody or deep, just enough to disturb the grain of the wood. You pause, your mind races to assign blame. Maybe the delivery guy brushed it with a package, maybe a neighborhood cat, maybe something in the wind carried debris sharp enough to etch your doorpost like that. And yet, something about the angle, the exact location, perhaps near the eye level of a child, or at a strange diagonal or oddly symmetrical, makes you hesitate. You ignore it, you move on, but that scratch, it grows, not in size, but in weight. The next time you pass the door, your eyes go there first. You can't help it. You tell yourself it's just a scratch, and yet your hand lingers a second too long on the doorknob. You feel foolish for feeling afraid, but something is off, not visible, not dramatic, just off, the kind of wrongness that would never hold up in court, never convince a friend, never seem like enough to sound an alarm. But inside, where intuition lives, you already know. A week passes, you see another mark, lower this time beneath the knob, like a fingernail run across the surface, hurried, pressured. You didn't do that. You're sure of it. You wipe it with your thumb. It doesn't go away. In fact, your skin tingles, cold, sharp. The door suddenly feels not like a boundary you control, but something being observed, studied, prepared. At this stage, the atmosphere around your entryway changes. The air is heavier. The hallway gets colder. Not a physical chill necessarily, though sometimes that too, but a presence, a spiritual humidity, like the aftermath of a storm that never actually came. The lights flicker once. You hear small creaks, like someone shifting their weight just outside. You open the door fast one night, suddenly, hoping to catch whoever might be vandalizing it. There's no one, just wind, or no wind at all, stillness. Oppressive stillness. Your pet starts acting strange. A dog that used to run to the door now growls before reaching it. A cat avoids the mat and walks in a wide circle around the frame. One day you try to leave and your keys are not on the hook. You search for half an hour, frustrated, muttering, only to find them sitting in plain view where you swore you'd already looked. It's not just forgetfulness, it's displacement, subtle disorder, a spiritual unraveling at the border of your home. Friends come by. One of them frowns at the entryway. They don't say anything, but their body tenses. They step in quickly. Some laugh awkwardly. Others say, "Something about your place feels different." Still, you say nothing. You don't want to sound like you're spiraling, but something in you knows. That scratch was not random. It's not just physical marks on wood anymore. It's interference with your sense of time, your memory, your clarity. You begin to forget small things. Did you lock the door last night? You were sure you had, and yet it's unlocked in the morning. Did you hear something at 3:17 a.m.? Or was it a dream, a knocking but soft, repetitive? You glance at your security camera footage and see nothing, but the audio is full of static or silence, nothing, and that's what disturbs you most. Not what you see, but what you don't. The scratch has become a symbol. It is not about the physical damage to your door. It is about an access point. It is the signature left behind when something has touched your boundary without your permission. Something spiritual, something cunning, something old. You begin to feel watched, but only at the door, nowhere else, just there, like something waits to be let in, but can't come unless you grant it entrance. And this is where the curse is most clever, because all it needs is one moment of forgetfulness, one agreement, one crack in your vigilance, one midnight whisper you acknowledge with a fearful breath. You start having dreams, someone standing at your threshold. You can never see their face, they never come in, they only stand and wait and smile and sometimes whisper your name. The scratch glows in your dream, faintly like embers cooling in ash. You wake with a tight chest. You try not to tell anyone, but the feeling doesn't leave. It lingers all day, even when you're away from the house, especially when you're about to come back. One day you reach to open your front door, and before you touch the knob it moves, just slightly, just enough. It turns a fraction, not from wind, not from poor alignment, with purpose. You freeze, your breath catches, the hair on your neck stands. You open the door fast. But nothing is there, and yet everything is. The first sign of the curse is always the easiest to dismiss. That is what makes it so dangerous, because the witch, whether living or spiritual, knows this. She knows to start with the small, the forgettable, the everyday. She understands that before she can cross the threshold, you must first lower your guard. And so she scratches, not to damage, not to hurt, but to mark. That first scratch is a flag, a beacon, a spiritual GPS, and once it's placed, if unchallenged, it becomes a door within a door, a hidden access point, a place where the veil thins. The scratch, you see, is not the curse, it is the invitation. It is your job to revoke it. There comes a point when something starts dying, not dramatically, not suddenly, but persistently, just outside your door. The potted plants that once thrived there, sun, drenched and watered, now wilt no matter how much attention you give them. Leaves crisp overnight, flowers droop prematurely. You change the soil, you rotate the pots for better light, you switch fertilizers, but it doesn't matter. It's not the plants, it's the ground beneath them, the air around them, the invisible energy at the threshold. Something has changed, and if you listen closely, not just with ears, but with spirit, you'll sense it. A repelling force emanating outward, subtle but potent, like a noxious spiritual vapor. It clings to the edge of your home like soot, not enough to overwhelm, but enough to choke, enough to send life retreating. Even insects seem to avoid the space, or worse, gather unnaturally in one spot, unmoving as if enchanted. You find a cluster of dead flies near the base of the door. You sweep them away. The next day more. You spray, you clean, you light incense. Still they return. It's not infestation, it's attraction. As if something unseen and rotting dwells just behind the doorframe, drawing death to itself like iron to a magnet. The welcome mat feels heavier. You don't know why, but your foot lands on it with dread, not ease. It smells slightly different there too. Not foul exactly, but off. The way air smells before lightning. Electric, metallic, and charged with anticipation. This is not your imagination. This is not paranoia. This is your body responding to the unnatural. Children hesitate at the step. Animals shiver near the door. Plants decay. You don't notice it all at once, but gradually, until one day it hits you like a whispered confession. This threshold repels life. You bring in a new plant, a strong one, something hardy, something low maintenance, Aloe, perhaps, maybe a cactus. It dies faster than the others. You place one farther out on the porch, and it does fine, but the one near the frame browns, shrivels, collapses inward. The soil itself seems cursed. You dig into it and find it moist, rich, and yet sterile, void of the warmth that soil should carry. It is earth without welcome. This is not symbolic. This is spiritual sabotage. The curse was not meant to burst into flame. It was meant to leach vitality slowly. The threshold has become a spiritual wound, a place where life is siphoned and replaced with despair. The more it is ignored, the deeper the rot grows. This is why your house feels heavier each time you return. It's not the schedule, it's not your job, it's not stress. It's the quiet, hungry influence pressing at the very edge of your living space. You notice mold forming in places it shouldn't. You clean obsessively, but it reappears. Dust thickens unnaturally near the corners. The paint near the bottom of the door begins to peel, curl, flake. Wood seems to splinter faster than it should. And worst of all, light avoids the entrance. Even on bright days, the front of your home looks a little darker than it should. Not shadowed by trees, not blocked by design, just dimmer, like light fears that space. You light candles near the door, but they flicker oddly even without wind. They sputter. Sometimes they extinguish on their own. You bring in fresh bulbs for the porch light. They burn out early. You begin to sense it clearly now. This space does not want to be illuminated. The energy around your threshold feeds on stillness, on decay, on the absence of life. You invite a friend over. They pause at the step. Maybe they say nothing, but they hesitate. They wipe their feet more than once. They look up, frown slightly, and knock instead of walking in. They used to just enter, but now something in them holds back. Weird energy, they might say, half joking, you should sage this place. They don't know how right they are. They feel the repulsion even if they can't name it, even if they try to laugh it off. And then there are the dreams again, this time not of someone at your door, but of someone leaving, carrying something precious away from you, always through the front door. You run after them in the dream, but your legs don't move. The door closes slowly behind them, and you can't scream. When you wake, you feel like something has truly left. You check your phone. A missed call? A message you wish had come but didn't. An opportunity passed. Another argument in the air. Another small death. Because the curse at your threshold is not just about physical life. It's about spiritual vitality. It seeks to dull your joy, disrupt your peace, sour your relationships. It attacks not like a lion but like rust. Quietly, constantly, without pause. You begin to isolate. People visit less. Packages go missing. The mail arrives damp. Conversations at the door feel strained, and the threshold itself becomes a space you subconsciously avoid. You enter quickly. You exit faster. You don't pause there. You don't breathe deeply near it, because deep down some part of you recognizes this place has become a gate not for people, but for forces, and not the kind you want. The repelling of life is not a coincidence. It is a defense mechanism of the curse. It does not want joy to dwell in that space. It does not want community or beauty or growth to take root there. It wants to strip the front of your house of all signs of vitality so that it can mark it spiritually as abandoned. Even though you live there, even though you're inside, it seeks to create illusion at the spiritual level that your home is neglected, forgotten, vulnerable. That is when it strikes deepest, because once the threshold no longer hosts the energy of life, it becomes available to forces that thrive in death, emotional death, marital decay, mental fatigue, sleeplessness, argument, loneliness. These are the fruit born at a cursed door. These are the signs of a threshold-turned tomb, and unless it is reclaimed, actively, spiritually, intentionally, it will continue, because this type of darkness does not retreat with time. It retreats with opposition. It retreats when life is forcefully re-established, when you take back the soil, When you plant not just flowers, but words, declarations, songs. When you anoint the frame, bless the mat, speak life where death was fed. When you stand at your door, not rushed, not timid, but bold, aware, and prayerful, because your door is not just a hinge and handle, it is a border between worlds, and if the curse has repelled life at that edge, then it is already watching for its next step inward. It rarely begins with malice. The most dangerous doors are not thrown wide open. They're cracked, just enough for something to slip through, and the most effective curses are not hurled at you from across a fire, shouted in the tongue of ancient wrath. They are invited by your own silence, habits, or distractions. That is the true nature of the third sinister sign. Not that something has come into your home uninvited, but that you let it in, even if you didn't mean to. You didn't chant, you didn't draw symbols, you didn't seek anything out, but something about your behavior, your speech, your consents, spoken or unspoken, became an invitation. And when you invite something spiritually dark, even without awareness, it never comes alone. It brings with it heaviness, confusion, delay, fear, and fragmentation. Perhaps it started the night you answered a knock and no one was there. You opened the door, just a few seconds, you shrugged, you locked up again. But what if it wasn't a prank? What if something was watching? What if your reaction, the openness, the curiosity, the laughter, gave it enough room to enter, not your house, but your permission field? It might have been an object brought into your home, a gift from someone who unknowingly or knowingly transferred spiritual energy through it. A thrift store find, a souvenir from a place you didn't understand, something with a strange symbol on it. You placed it on your shelf, or worse, near the door, and since then things have been different. The door becomes more than wood and bolts. It becomes a spiritual filter, and every time you speak with frustration near it, every curse muttered under your breath, every hopeless sigh, every word of self-hate, it soaks into the threshold like poison into roots. Your own words turn traitor. They become incantations not in ceremony, but in tone, frequency, belief. You stop greeting people with warmth. You stop smiling at the entrance. You drag yourself in and out of the house without intention. You slam the door often, or let it hang open longer than needed. It creaks, it moans, it echoes, and still you say nothing because you're tired. But that fatigue isn't just physical. It's spiritual. It's a tiredness fed by something invisible that you fed first. Witches don't need permission in the legal sense. They only need spiritual negligence. They thrive on loopholes. And the moment your posture becomes passive, the moment you stop treating the door as sacred space and start treating it like an afterthought, they begin to draw near, not because you're evil, but because you're unguarded. You joke about darkness. You say things like this house is cursed, or it's always something with this place, and not realizing that your words are like keys. You speak in agreement with negativity, and darkness hears it as author.